456, chapters 79 and 80 of the Count of Monte Cristo. Book Talk begins at 1446.
Welcome to Craftlit, the podcast for crafters who love books. My name is Heather Ordover, and I'm podcasting from where the Delaware River meets the Old York Road, New Hope, Pennsylvania. Episode 456.
It's evil! Don't touch it!
This episode of Craftlit is brought to you by its listeners. Many thanks and much gratefulness to all of the listeners who have gone over to patreon.com/Craftlit and pledged their support to the show. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you. Well, if you're old enough to remember the movie Time Bandits, you might be old enough to remember that that was the last line of the movie Time Bandits. And it will all make sense why that is the title of today's episode by the time that you're done with today's chapters. But first, we have a couple of newsy things from this week's Crafty Chat, which was held at an undisclosed location in Lumberville, Pennsylvania. It was too hot in the house, and I was afraid, honestly, that I would short out my keyboard by dripping sweat on it. It was that humid. I learned undisclosed locations on the banks of a river are really much more pleasant than being stuck in the house. Of late, my children and I have both been doing an awful lot of voiceover work for Chilling Tales for Dark Nights and their new podcast, the Simply Scary Podcast. And I've started listening to several of them because they were less chilling and more Twilight Zone-y. And I continue to be impressed with the quality of work that these guys are putting out. They have so many of us doing voices for them all over the world. And we send in our audio, and all of a sudden, a week later, there is magic created. Sound effects and really excellent production values. They've developed a system where they are able to run the place like a professional production studio. And it's really been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun to watch the boys have a job and take it seriously and learn how to take direction, which is awesome. And it's also been a lot of fun for me to watch everything kind of grow from, hey, my dad has a barn, let's put on a show kind of operation to really a professional one. So huge shout out to the guys over at Chilling Tales and Simply Scary Podcasts. If you are interested in finding out more, I have links to all of their information over at craftlit.com/456. And that goes to another question that I received this week on the craftlit.com website's contact page. The question in this case had to do specifically with the Fuller's clay that I'd been using for putting on mosquito bites. And strangely enough, that's what I talk about on the Crafty Chat bit that I'm going to play for you this week. However, the larger question was probably even more important than relieving mosquito bites. And when I say that, you know how seriously I must mean that, because nothing is more important than making mosquito bites stop itching. And that is that finding things at craftlit.com, if you don't know the episode number, is finding things can be pretty tricky. And that's for a lot of different reasons. One of them is that we have 11 years of show notes going back. Technology has changed an awful lot over the last 11 years. And my ability to go back in and fiddle with things on the website has changed an awful lot over the last 11 years. So if you're ever listening on craftlit.com and you realize that I've mentioned something that is probably something people are going to want to find out more about or look up information on, or may listen somewhere else and come back to the webpage and say, wow, where's that stuff on the Fuller's, whatever it was called? I can't remember, mosquito stuff. Right now, the chances of any of the show notes being tagged with the word mosquito or Fuller's earth clay are slim to none. If that happens and you realize that a tag has been missed because those are listed at the bottom of the page, please feel free to put the terms into the comments section of that page. That'll do two things. The first thing is it will give me a heads up that, oh, you need to go and add these tags when you have time. And B, until I can get around to it, it will provide those words on a page that will allow people to search for them. And that would be an enormous benefit to both your fellow listeners and to me. And along the same lines, if you have extra time and you are interested in doing something like that while you are listening to episodes or back episodes, please contact me and I will be more than happy to show you how to log on to the site and make those edits and bring at least that part of the craftlit.com website up to a more useful speed for everyone. The technology by which people are able to search audio for specific terms is improving at a remarkable speed. And someday you will actually be able to search a podcast episode by audio. We're not quite there yet, but it's going to happen. However, until then, I really should be tagging the show notes of the episodes better. So sorry about that. The distance between when I record and when I finish the show notes, even when I have notes in front of me, my propensity for thinking of what I think are interesting tangents on the fly often interfere with my ability to get all the notes down in the show notes properly. So apologies for that, but also I hope the tangents are fun. Okay, new excitement in the mosquito front. Now, first, I just read something about, do you remember the ticks that were spreading Rocky Mountain spotted fever? Evidently, those ticks, which were Lone Star ticks, these are evidently, and I have an article that I am linking to in the show notes, they are spreading through as few as one bite, through as little as one bite. They are spreading a meat allergy for which there is currently no cure. Now, for someone like me who can't eat gluten, this could be deadly because it would mean there's no protein left for me to eat. Most fake meat, vegetarian meat, the kind of meat that we used to have all the time when we didn't want to have meat, most of that has wheat products in it. So please be careful. I have linked to a spray that is supposed to be very, very good at preventing all kinds of bug attachments to oneself or to one's children. This is a spray that is supposed to be safe to put on the clothes of children. This is not something we spray on our skin. It is not DEET. It is another thing entirely. I will link to articles and to where you can get this spray. And please, 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 my 17-year-old son came home from a walk yesterday. He went out to get some exercise. Isn't that great? He came back, took a shower, and when I went into the bathroom after him, there was a tick just climbing along on the wall. It hadn't attached to him, but it must have been on his clothes because there it was. So he went back into the bathroom and rechecked himself. He was fine. But it still spooked me because he wasn't, galumphing around in any shrubbery. He was just walking down the road here. So please be careful this season. I've heard that the deer ticks in the Northeast are going to be worse than average because we didn't have a cold enough winter. I'm assuming that the same problem will happen everywhere with whatever nasty buggies you have in your vicinity. Please be safe. And here's the Crafty Chat news on how to prevent itchiness from mosquito bites. Here we go. It is the weirdest little tool you will ever see. It is a little green and yellow elbow-shaped piece of plastic. I mean, really, the thing is barely 2 inches, 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. It's very small. It has a green button, and you hold it kind of strangely. But the yellow part at the opposite end of the elbow bend from the green button has 2 little yellow plastic prongs that poke out like little bitty horns out of the top of it. If you put those prongs on either side of a bite, and we've tried this so far on what we think is a spider bite and mosquito bites, several mosquito bites. You put those prongs on either side of the bite and you depress the green plunger several times. It clicks, 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 and it's clicking because there are little metal parts inside of this that are creating a super tiny but very feelable spark. The spark is transmitted into those points, the little horns on the top of the yellow part. And even though you're not actually touching anything metal, the spark is being transferred to your skin through those little prongs. You don't have to push hard either. It's not like it's painful, but you definitely feel a zap. It's kind of like if you've ever put your tongue on a 9-volt battery. It's no worse than that. In fact, it's a lot less strong than a fresh 9-volt battery is. Something about the spark and the bite site where the saliva of the mosquito or the venom from the spider is still pooled. Ew. The little spark evidently superheats in a very micro sense the venom or saliva of the creature involved. And in superheating it, it alters the composition of it enough to stop it from being insanely itchy. Which, if you've been listening for a long time, you know that this is the bane of my existence. There used to be more banes, I think, of my existence. And now really it's just down to this one. My kids are great. My husband's great. Life is great. It's just mosquito bites. But this really works. It's temporary. But by temporary, I mean like 6 hours. So you can go a long time without noticing that you've been bitten after using this. You can also get these little bite patches. And I have found that this is a double whammy that works brilliantly. However, you can't sweat while wearing these bite patches. So it's not really good for going out and doing anything. It's good for sleeping, though. I'm putting links to both of these things, the little zap-de-doo-dah thing and the bite patches. I'll put those in the show notes. They're available at Amazon, and they work. Blown away. Mind blown. There's also, I think from last summer or summer before, the Fuller's Earth Clay, which our listener recommended. I'm not in any way dissing that solution. It's just sometimes if you're out in public, there's no way to get the Fuller's Earth Clay on you fast enough. I did start carrying a tub of it with me, though. And when I was in Tampa for our training, I assumed there would be bites. I brought my little tub of Fuller's Earth Clay dry so I could mix it up with a little bit of water and turn it into the paste while I was there. And I brought my little zappity-doo-dah thing. I didn't have to use either because I was trapped in a conference room the whole time, which honestly was just fine because it was thundering and lightninging and storming in ways I think that would have surprised Noah, to be completely honest. Our flight down was delayed 5 hours plus the time we spent on the tarmac just waiting for takeoff allowances. Wow, that was a lot of storms. The entire state of Florida was covered in thunderstorms. I've never seen anything like that weather map. They were very very smart. When we got to the gate and they said, we're delayed 5 hours, people might, not me, of course, but other people might, and not you would never do this, but other people, not such wonderful people, might get a little irked at being delayed 5 hours after rushing to get to the airport on time. Very wisely, they had the guy at the gate, the poor guy at the gate, they had him turn the screen around, the monitor, and display the NOAA page that showed for, I don't know if it was air traffic controllers or just for operational management, very official looking weather map of Florida with all of the lightning strikes. And they kept changing because they were actually tracking, lightning strikes in real time. So they're showing all the lightning strikes from the top all the way down to the bottom of Florida. And they said, as soon as these move out, they're traveling from west to east. As soon as they move out of the state, we'll be good to go. We might be able to leave earlier, so don't go far. That was the problem. Because I said, look, I'll go eat. I haven't eaten anything yet. I'll go have a drink. I'll go relax. I've got work to do. Can I go to a restaurant? And luckily there was one that was right there. It was overpriced and not very good, but they had really good tequila. It was a Mexican restaurant. So those 5 hours just flew by. And while I was there watching, I noticed that nobody got angry at the poor guy at the gate because they could see reality on that map just as much as the people making the decision. You kind of can't fight the facts when they're shown to you like that. It's pretty nice. All right, book talk. There isn't any this week. The chapters we're listening to today are so self-evident. There is only one thing for me to add after we listen, and that is it. Aside from what I assume will be general vocalizations of horror and shock at the end of today's chapters. Cool, right? Okay, here we go. Flying through chapters 79 and 80 of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Here we go.
Chapter 79. The Lemonade. Morel was, in fact, very happy. Mr. Noirtier had just sent for him, and he was in such haste to know the reason of his doing so that he had not stopped to take a cab, placing infinitely more dependence on his own 2 legs than on the 4 legs of a cab-horse. He had therefore set off at a furious rate from the Rue Meslay, and was hastening with rapid strides in the direction of the Faubourg Saint-Honoré. Morel advanced with a firm, manly tread, and poor Barrois followed him as he best might. Morel was only 31. Barrois was 60 years of age. Morel was deeply in love, and Barrois was dying with heat and exertion. These 2 men, thus opposed in age and interests, resembled 2 parts of a triangle, presenting the extremes of separation, yet nevertheless possessing their point of union. This point of union was Noirtier, and it was he who had just sent for Morel, with the request that the latter would lose no time in coming to him, a command which Morel obeyed to the letter, to the great discomfiture of Barrois. On arriving at the house, Morel was not even out of breath, for love lends wings to our desires, but Barrois, who had long forgotten what it was to love, was sorely fatigued by the expedition he had been constrained to use. The old servant introduced Morel by a private entrance, closed the door of the study, and soon the rustling of a dress announced the arrival of Valentine. She looked marvellously beautiful in her deep mourning dress, and Morel experienced such intense delight in gazing upon her that he felt as if he could almost have dispensed with the conversation of her grandfather. But the easy chair of the old man was heard rolling along the floor, and he soon made his appearance in the room. Noirtier acknowledged by a look of extreme kindness and benevolence the thanks which Morel lavished on him for his timely intervention on behalf of Valentine and himself, an intervention which had saved them from despair. Morel then cast on the invalid an interrogative look as to new favour which he designed to bestow on him. Valentine was sitting at a little distance from them, timidly awaiting the moment when she should be obliged to speak. Noirtier fixed his eyes on her. "Am I to say what you told me?" asked Valentine. Noirtier made a sign that she was to do so. "Monsieur Morel," said Valentine to the young man, who was regarding her with the most intense interest, "my grandfather, Monsieur Noirtier, had 1,000 things to say, which he told me 3 days ago, and now he has sent for you, that I may repeat them to you. I will repeat them then, and since he has chosen me as his interpreter, I will be faithful to the trust and will not alter a word of his intentions." "Oh, I am listening with the greatest impatience," replied the young man. "Speak, I beg of you." Valentine cast down her eyes. This was a good omen for Morel, for he knew that nothing but happiness could have the power of thus overcoming Valentine. "My grandfather intends leaving this house," said she, "and Barrois is looking out suitable apartments for him in another." "But you, Mademoiselle de Villefort, you who are necessary to Monsieur Noirtier's happiness." "I?" interrupted Valentine. "I shall not leave my grandfather. That is an understood thing between us. My apartment will be close to his. Now, Monsieur de Villefort must either give his consent to this plan or his refusal. In the first case, I shall leave directly, and in the second, I shall wait till I am of age, which will be in about 10 months. Then I shall be free. I shall have an independent fortune and—" "And what?" demanded Morel. "And with my grandfather's consent, I shall fulfill the promise which I have made you." Valentine pronounced these last few words in such a low tone that nothing but Morel's intense interest in what she was saying could have enabled him to hear them. "Have I not explained your wishes, grandpapa?" said Valentine, addressing Noirtier. "Yes," looked the old man. "Once under my grandfather's roof, Monsieur Morel can visit me in the presence of my good and worthy protector. If we still feel that the union we contemplated will be likely to ensure our future comfort and happiness, in that case I shall expect Monsieur Morel to come and claim me at my own hands. But alas, I have heard it said that hearts inflamed by obstacles to their desire grew cold in time of security. I trust we shall never find it so in our experience." "Oh!" cried Morel, almost tempted to throw himself on his knees before Noirtier and Valentine, and to adore them as two superior beings. "What have I ever done in my life to merit such unbounded happiness?" "Until that time," continued the young girl in a calm and self-possessed tone of voice, "we will conform to circumstance, and be guided by the wishes of our friends, so long as those wishes do not tend finally to separate us. In a word, and I repeat it because it expresses all I wish to convey, we will wait." "And I swear to make all the sacrifices which this word imposes, sir," said Morel, "not only with resignation, but with cheerfulness." "Therefore," continued Valentine, looking playfully at Maximilien, "no more inconsiderate actions, no more rash projects, for you surely would not wish to compromise one who from this day regards herself as destined honourably and happily to bear your name." Morel looked obedience to her commands. Noirtier regarded the lovers with a look of ineffable tenderness, while Barrois, who had remained in the room in the character of a man privileged to know everything that passed, smiled on the youthful couple, as he wiped the perspiration from his bald forehead. "How hot you look, my good Barrois," said Valentine. "Ah, I have been running very fast, mademoiselle. But I must do Monsieur Morel the justice to say that he ran still faster." Noirtier directed their attention to a waiter, on which was placed a decanter containing lemonade and a glass. The decanter was nearly full, with the exception of a little which had been already drunk by Monsieur Noirtier. "Come, Barrois," said the young girl, "take some of this lemonade. I see you are coveting a good draught of it." "The fact is, mademoiselle," said Barrois, "I am dying with thirst, and since you are so kind as to offer it to me, I cannot say I should at all object to drinking your health in a glass of it." "Take some, then, and come back immediately." Barrois took away the waiter, and hardly was he outside the door, which in his haste he forgot to shut, than they saw him throw back his head and empty to the very dregs the glass which Valentine had filled. Valentine and Morel were exchanging their adieux in the presence of Noirtier when a ring was heard at the door-bell. It was the signal of a visit. Valentine looked at her watch. "It is past noon," said she, "and to-day is Saturday. I dare say it is the doctor, grandpapa." Noirtier looked his conviction that she was right in her supposition. "He will come in here, and Monsieur Morel had better go. Do you not think so, grandpapa?" "Yes," signed the old man. "Barrois!" cried Valentine. "Barrois!" "I am coming, mademoiselle," replied he. "Barrois will open the door for you," said Valentine, addressing Morel. "And now remember one thing, monsieur officer, that my grandfather commands you not to take any rash or ill-advised step which would be likely to compromise our happiness." "I promised him to wait," replied Morel, "and I will wait." At this moment Barrois entered. "Who rang?" asked Valentine. "Dr. d'Avrigny," said Barrois, staggering as if he would fall. "What is the matter, Barrois?" said Valentine. The old man did not answer, but looked at his master with wild, staring eyes, while with his cramped hand he grasped a piece of furniture to enable him to stand upright. "He is going to fall," cried Morel. The rigours which had attacked Barrois gradually increased, The features of the face became quite altered, and the convulsive movement of the muscles appeared to indicate the approach of a most serious nervous disorder. Noirtier, seeing Barrois in this pitiable condition, showed by his looks all the various emotions of sorrow and sympathy which can animate the heart of a man. Barrois made some steps towards his master. "Ah, sir," said he, "tell me what is the matter with me. I am suffering. I cannot see. 1,000 fiery darts are piercing my brain. Oh, don't touch me. Pray don't." By this time his haggard eyes had the appearance of being ready to start from their sockets. His head fell back, and the lower extremities of the body began to stiffen. Valentine uttered a cry of horror. Morel took her in his arms as if to defend her from some unknown danger. "Monsieur d'Avrigny! Monsieur d'Avrigny!" cried she in a stifled voice. "Help! Help!" Barrois turned round and with a great effort stumbled a few steps, then fell at the feet of Noirtier, and resting his hand on the knee of the invalid, exclaimed, "My master! My good master!" At this moment Monsieur de Villefort, attracted by the noise, appeared on the threshold. Morel relaxed his hold of Valentine, and retreating to a distant corner of the room, remained half hidden behind a curtain. Pale, as if he had been gazing on a serpent, he fixed his terrified eye on the agonized sufferer. Noirtier, burning with impatience and terror, was in despair at his utter inability to help his old domestic, whom he regarded more in the light of a friend than a servant. One might be the fearful swelling of the veins of his forehead, and the contraction of the muscles around the eye trace the terrible conflict which was going on between the living, energetic mind and the inanimate and helpless body. Barrois, his features convulsed, his eyes suffused with blood, and his head thrown back, was lying at full length, beating the floor with his hands, while his legs had become so stiff that they looked as if they would break rather than bend. A slight appearance of foam was visible around the mouth, and he breathed painfully and with extreme difficulty. Villefort seemed stupefied with astonishment, and remained gazing intently on the scene before him without uttering a word. He had not seen Morel. After a moment of dumb contemplation, during which his face became pale and his hair seemed to stand on end, he sprang toward the door, crying out, "Doctor! Doctor! Come instantly! Pray come!" "Madame! Madame!" cried Valentine, calling her stepmother, and running upstairs to meet her. "Come, quick, quick, and bring your bottle of smelling salts with you." "What is the matter?" said Madame de Villefort in a harsh and constrained tone. "Oh, come, come!" "But where is the doctor?" exclaimed Villefort. "Where is he?" Madame de Villefort now deliberately descended the staircase. In one hand she held her handkerchief, with which she appeared to be wiping her face, and in the other a bottle of English smelling salts. Her first look on entering the room was at Noirtier, whose face, independent of the emotion which such a scene could not fail of producing, proclaimed him to be in possession of his usual health. Her second glance was at the dying man. She turned pale, and her eye passed quickly from the servant and rested on the master. "In the name of heaven, madame," said Villefort, "where is the doctor? He was with you just now. You see this a fit of apoplexy, and he might be saved if he could be but bled." "Has he eaten anything lately?" asked Madame de Villefort, eluding her husband's question. "Madame," replied Valentine, "he has not even breakfasted. He has been running very fast on an errand with which my grandfather charged him, and when he returned took nothing but a glass of lemonade." "Ah," said Madame de Villefort, "why did he not take wine? Lemonade was a very bad thing for him." "Grandpapa's bottle of lemonade was standing just by his side. Poor Barrois was very thirsty, and was thankful to drink anything he could find." Madame de Villefort started. Noirtier looked at her with a glance of the most profound scrutiny. "He was such a short neck," said she. "Madame," said Villefort, I ask where is Monsieur d'Avrigny? In God's name, answer me." "He is with Edward, who is not quite well," replied Madame de Villefort, no longer being able to avoid answering. Villefort rushed upstairs to fetch him. "Take this," said Madame de Villefort, giving her smelling bottle to Valentine. "They will no doubt bleed him, therefore I will retire, for I cannot endure the sight of blood." And she followed her husband upstairs. Morrel now emerged from his hiding-place, where he had remained quite unperceived, so great had been the general confusion. "Go away as quick as you can, Maximilian," said Valentine, "and stay till I send for you. Go." Morrel looked towards Noirtier for permission to retire. The old man, who had preserved all his usual coolness, made a sign to him to do so. The young man pressed Valentine's hand to his lips, then left the house by a back staircase. At the same moment that he quitted the room, Villefort and the doctor entered by an opposite door. Barrois was now showing signs of returning consciousness. The crisis seemed past. A low moaning was heard, and he raised himself on one knee. d'Avrigny and Villefort laid him on a couch. "What do you prescribe, doctor?" demanded Villefort. "Give me some water and ether. You have some in the house, have you not?" "Yes." "Send for some oil of turpentine and tartar emetic." Villefort immediately dispatched a messenger. "And now let everyone retire." "Must I go too?" asked Valentine timidly. "Yes, mademoiselle, you especially," replied the doctor abruptly. Valentine looked at Monsieur d'Avrigny with astonishment, kissed her grandfather on the forehead, and left the room. The doctor closed the door after her with a gloomy air. "Look, look, doctor," said Villefort. "He is quite coming round again. I really do not think, after all, it is anything of consequence." Monsieur d'Avrigny answered by a melancholy smile. "How do you feel, Barrois?" asked he. "A little better, sir." "Will you drink some of this ether and water?" "I will try, but don't touch me." "Why not?" "Because I feel that if you were only to touch me with the tip of your finger, the fit would return." "Drink." Barrois took the glass, and raising it to his purple lips, took about half of the liquid offered him. "Where do you suffer?" asked the doctor. "Everywhere. I feel cramps over my whole body." "Do you find any dazzling sensation before the eyes?" "Yes." "Any noise in the ears?" "Frightful." "When did you first feel that?" "Just now." "Suddenly?" "Yes, like a clap of thunder." "Did you feel nothing of it yesterday or the day before?" "Nothing." "No drowsiness?" "None." "What have you eaten today?" "I have eaten nothing. I only drank a glass of my master's lemonade, that's all." And Barrois turned towards Noirtier, who, immovably fixed in his armchair, was contemplating this terrible scene without allowing a word or a movement to escape him. "Where is this lemonade?" asked the doctor eagerly. "Downstairs, in the decanter." "Whereabouts downstairs?" "In the kitchen." "Shall I go and fetch it, doctor?" inquired Villefort.
"No. Stay here and try to make Barrois drink the rest of this glass of ether and water.
"I will go myself and fetch the lemonade." d'Avrigny bounded towards the door, flew down the back staircase, and almost knocked down Madame de Villefort in his haste, who was herself going down to the kitchen. She cried out, but d'Avrigny paid no attention to her. Possessed with but one idea, he cleared the last 4 steps with a bound and rushed into the kitchen, where he saw the decanter about 3 parts empty still standing on the waiter where it had been left. He darted upon it as an eagle would seize upon its prey. Panting with loss of breath, he returned to the room he had just left. Madame de Villefort was slowly ascending the steps which led to her room.
"Is this the decanter you spoke of?" asked d'Avrigny. "Yes, doctor." Is this the same lemonade of which you partook?" "I believe so." "What did it taste like?" "It had a bitter taste." The doctor poured some drops of the lemonade into the palm of his hand, put his lips to it, and after having rinsed his mouth as a man does when he is tasting wine, he spat the liquor into the fireplace. "It is no doubt the same," said he. "Did you drink some too, Monsieur Noirtier?" "Yes." "And did you also discover a bitter taste?" "Yes." "Oh, doctor," cried Barrois, "the fit is coming on again. Oh, do something for me." The doctor flew to his patient. "That emetic, Villefort. See if it is coming." Villefort sprang into the passage, exclaiming, "The emetic! The emetic! Is it come yet?" No one answered. The most profound terror reigned throughout the house. "If I had anything by means of which I could inflate the lungs," said d'Avrigny, looking around him, "perhaps I might prevent suffocation. But there is nothing which would do, nothing." "Oh, sir," cried Barrois, "are you going to let me die without help? Oh, I am dying! Oh, save me!" A pen, said the doctor. There was one lying on the table. He endeavoured to introduce it into the mouth of the patient, who in the midst of his convulsions was making vain attempts to vomit, but the jaws were so clinched that the pen could not pass them. This second attack was much more violent than the first, and he had slipped from the couch to the ground, where he was writhing in agony. The doctor left him in his paroxysm, knowing that he could do nothing to alleviate it, and going up to Noirtier, said abruptly, "How do you find yourself? Well?" "Yes." "Have you any weight on the chest, or does your stomach feel light and comfortable? Eh?" "Yes." "Then you feel pretty much as you generally do, after you have had the dose which I am accustomed to give you every Sunday?" "Yes." "Did Barrois make your lemonade?" "Yes." "Was it you who asked him to drink some of it?" "No." "Was it Monsieur de Villefort?" "No." "Madame?" "No." "It was your granddaughter, then, was it not?" "Yes." A groan from Barrois, accompanied by a yawn which seemed to crack the very jawbones, attracted the attention of Monsieur d'Avrigny. He left Monsieur Noirtier and returned to the sick man. "Barrois," said the doctor, "can you speak?" Barrois muttered a few unintelligible words. "Try and make an effort to do so, my good man," said d'Avrigny. Barrois reopened his bloodshot eyes. "Who made the lemonade?" "I did." "Did you bring it to your master directly it was made?" "No." "You left it somewhere, then, in the meantime?" "Yes, I left it in the pantry, because I was called away." "Who brought it into the room, then?" "Mademoiselle Valentine." D'Avrigny struck his forehead with his hand. "Gracious heaven!" exclaimed he. "Doctor! Doctor!" cried Barrois, who felt another fit coming. "Will they never bring that emetic?" asked the doctor. "Here is a glass with one already prepared," said Villefort, entering the room. "Who prepared it?" "The chemist who came here with me." "Drink it," said the doctor to Barrois. "Impossible, doctor. It is too late. My throat is closing up. I am choking. Oh, my heart! Oh, my head! Oh, what agony! Shall I suffer like this long?" "No, no, friend," replied the doctor. "You will soon cease to suffer." "Oh, I understand you," said the unhappy man. "My God, have mercy upon me!" And uttering a fearful cry, Barrois fell back as if he had been struck by lightning. D'Avrigny put his hand to his heart and placed a glass before his lips. "Well?" said Villefort. "Go to the kitchen and get me some syrup of violets." Villefort went immediately. "Do not be alarmed, Monsieur Noirtier," said d'Avrigny. "I am going to take my patient into the next room to bleed him. This sort of attack is very frightful to witness." And taking Barrois under the arms,
he dragged him into an adjoining room, but almost immediately he returned to fetch the lemonade. Noirtier closed his right eye. "You want Valentine, do you not? I will tell them to send her to you." Villefort returned, and d'Avrigny met him in the passage. "Well, how is he now?" asked he. "Come in here," said d'Avrigny, and he took him into the chamber where the sick man lay. "Is he still in a fit?" said the procureur. "He is dead." Villefort drew back a few steps, and clasping his hands, exclaimed with real amazement and sympathy, "Dead? And so soon, too?" "Yes, it is very soon," said the doctor, looking at the corpse before him. "But that ought not to astonish you. Monsieur and Madame de Saint-Méran died as soon. People die very suddenly in your house, Monsieur Villefort." "What?" cried the magistrate with an accent of horror and consternation. "Are you still harping on this terrible idea?" "Still, sir, and I shall always do so," replied d'Avrigny, "for it has never for one instant ceased to retain possession of my mind, and that you may be quite sure I am not mistaken this time, listen well to what I am going to say, Monsieur de Villefort." The magistrate trembled convulsively. "There is a poison which destroys life almost without leaving any perceptible traces. I know it well. I have studied it in all its forms and in the effects which it produces. I recognize the presence of this poison in the case of poor Barrois as well as in that of Madame de Saint-Méran. There is a way of detecting its presence. It restores the blue color of litmus paper reddened by an acid, and it turns syrup of violets green. We have no litmus paper, but see, here, they come with the syrup of violets." The doctor was right. Steps were heard in the passage. Monsieur d'Avrigny opened the door, and took from the hands of the chambermaid a cup which contained 2 or 3 spoonfuls of the syrup. He then carefully closed the door. "Look," said he to the procureur, whose heart beat so loudly that it might almost be heard. "Here is in this cup some syrup of violets, and this decanter contains the remainder of the lemonade of which Monsieur Noirtier and Barrois partook. If the lemonade be pure and inoffensive, the syrup will retain its color. If, on the contrary, the lemonade be drugged with the poison, the syrup will become green. Look closely." The doctor then slowly poured some drops of the lemonade from the decanter into the cup, and in an instant a light, cloudy sediment began to form at the bottom of the cup. This sediment first took a blue shade, then from the color of sapphire it passed to that of opal, and from opal to emerald. Arrived at this last hue, it changed no more. The result of the experiment left no doubt whatever on the mind. "The unfortunate Barrois has been poisoned," said d'Avrigny, "and I will maintain this assertion before God and man." Villefort said nothing, but he clasped his hands, opened his haggard eyes, and, overcome with his emotion, sank into a chair. End of chapter 79. Chapter 80. The Accusation. Monsieur d'Avrigny soon restored the magistrate to consciousness, who had looked like a second corpse in that chamber of death. "Oh, death is in my house!" cried Villefort. "Say rather crime," replied the doctor. "Monsieur d'Avrigny," cried Villefort, "I cannot tell you all I feel at this moment. Terror, grief, madness." "Yes," said Monsieur d'Avrigny with an imposing calmness, "but I think it is now time to act. I think it is time to stop this torrent of mortality. I can no longer bear to be in possession of these secrets without the hope of seeing the victims and society generally revenged." Villefort cast a gloomy look around him. "In my house!" murmured he. "In my house!" "Come, magistrate," said Monsieur d'Avrigny, "show yourself a man. As an interpreter of the law, Do honour to your profession by sacrificing your selfish interest to it."
"You make me shudder, doctor. Do you talk of a sacrifice?"
"I do."
"Do you then suspect anyone?"
"I suspect no one. Death raps at your door. It enters, it goes, not blindfolded, but circumspectly from room to room. Well, I follow its course, I track its passage, I adopt the wisdom of the ancients, and feel my way for my friendship for your family and my respect for you as a twofold bandage over my eyes. Well—"
"Oh, speak, speak, doctor. I shall have courage."
"Well, sir, you have in your establishment, or in your family, perhaps one of the frightful monstrosities of which each century produces only one. Locusta and Agrippina, living at the same time, were an exception, and prove the determination of Providence to effect the entire ruin of the Roman Empire, sullied by so many crimes. Brunhilde and Fredegonde were the results of the painful struggle of civilization in its infancy, when man was learning to control mind, were it even by an emissary from the realms of darkness. All these women have been, or were, beautiful. The same flower of innocence had flourished, or was still flourishing on their brow, that is seen on the brow of the culprit in your house." Villefort shrieked, clasped his hands, and looked at the doctor with a supplicating air. But the latter went on without pity. "Seek whom the crime will profit," says an axiom of jurisprudence.
"Doctor," cried Villefort, "alas, doctor, how often has man's justice been deceived by those fatal words? I know not why, but I feel that this crime—"
"You acknowledge, then, the existence of the crime?"
"Yes, I see too plainly that it does exist, but it seems that it is intended to affect me personally. I fear an attack myself after all these disasters."
"Oh, man," murmured d'Avrigny, "the most selfish of all animals, the most personal of all creatures, who believes the earth turns, the sun shines, and death strikes for him alone. An ant cursing God from the top of a blade of grass, and have those who have lost their lives lost nothing? Monsieur de Saint-Méran? Madame de Saint-Méran? Monsieur Noirtier?"
"How? Monsieur Noirtier?"
"Yes. Think you it was the poor servant's life was coveted? No, no, like Shakespeare's Polonius, he died for another. It was Noirtier the lemonade was intended for. It is Noirtier, logically speaking, who drank it. The other drank it only by accident. And although Barrois is dead, it was Noirtier whose death was wished for."
"But why did it not kill my father?"
"I told you one evening in the garden after Madame de Saint-Méran's death, because his system is accustomed to that very poison, and the dose was trifling to him, which would be fatal to another, because no one knows, not even the assassin, that for the last 12 months I have given Monsieur Noirtier brucine for his paralytic affection, while the assassin is not ignorant, for he has proved that brucine is a violent poison."
"Oh, have pity, have pity!"
murmured Villefort, wringing his hands. "Follow the culprit's steps. He first kills Monsieur de Saint-Méran."
"Oh, doctor!"
"I would swear to it. What I heard of his symptoms agrees too well with what I have seen in the other cases." Villefort ceased to contend. He only groaned. "He first kills Monsieur de Saint-Méran," repeated the doctor. "Then Madame de Saint-Méran? A double fortune to inherit." Villefort wiped the perspiration from his forehead. "Listen attentively."
"Alas!" stammered Villefort, I do not lose a single word."
"Monsieur Noirtier," resumed Monsieur d'Avrigny in the same pitiless tone, "Monsieur Noirtier had once made a will against you, against your family, in favor of the poor, in fact. Monsieur Noirtier is spared because nothing is expected from him. But he has no sooner destroyed his first will and made a second, than, for fear he should make a third, he is struck down." The will was made the day before yesterday, I believe. You see, there has been no time lost."
"Oh, merci, Monsieur d'Avrigny."
"No mercy, sir. The physician has a sacred mission on earth, and to fulfil it he begins at the source of life and goes down to the mysterious darkness of the tomb. When crime has been committed, and God, doubtless in anger, turns away his face, it is for the physician to bring the culprit to justice."
"Have mercy on my child, sir,"
murmured Villefort. "You see it is yourself who have first named her. You, her father."
"Have pity on Valentine. Listen, it is impossible. I would as willingly accuse myself. Valentine, whose heart is pure as a diamond or a lily."
"No pity, procureur. The crime is flagrant. Mademoiselle herself packed all the medicines which were sent to Monsieur de Saint-Méran, and Monsieur de Saint-Méran is dead. Mademoiselle de Villefort prepared all the cooling draughts which Madame de Saint-Méran took, and Madame de Saint-Méran is dead. Mademoiselle de Villefort took from the hands of Barrois, who was sent out, the lemonade which Monsieur Noirtier had every morning, and he has escaped by a miracle. Mademoiselle de Villefort is the culprit. She is the poisoner. To you, as the king's attorney, I denounce Mademoiselle de Villefort. Do your duty."
"Doctor, I resist no longer. I can no longer defend myself. I believe you, but for pity's sake, spare my life, my honor."
"Monsieur de Villefort," replied the doctor with increased vehemence, "there are occasions when I dispense with all foolish human circumspection. If your daughter had committed only one crime, and I saw her meditating another, I would say, 'Warn her, punish her, let her pass the remainder of her life in a convent, weeping and praying.' If she had committed two crimes, I would say, 'Here, Monsieur de Villefort, is a poison that the prisoner is not acquainted with, one that has no known antidote. Quick as thought, rapid as lightning, mortal as the thunderbolt, give her that poison, recommending her soul to God, and save your honor and your life, for it is yours she aims at. And I can picture her approaching your pillow, with her hypocritical smiles and her sweet exhortations. Woe to you, Monsieur de Villefort, if you do not strike first. That is what I would say had she only killed two persons. But she has seen three deaths, has contemplated three murdered persons, has knelt by three corpses. To the scaffold with the poisoner, to the scaffold. Do you talk of your honor? Do what I tell you, and immortality awaits you." Villefort fell on his knees.
"Listen," said he. "I have not the strength of mind you have, or rather that which you would not have if, instead of my daughter Valentine, your daughter Madeleine were concerned."
The doctor turned pale.
"Doctor, every son of woman is born to suffer and to die. I am content to suffer and to await death."
"Beware," said Monsieur d'Avrigny. "It may come slowly. You will see it approach after having struck your father, your wife, perhaps your son." Villefort, suffocating, pressed the doctor's arm.
"Listen," cried he. "Pity me. Help me. No, my daughter is not guilty. If you drag us both before a tribunal, I will still say, 'No, my daughter is not guilty. There is no crime in my house.' I will not acknowledge a crime in my house, for when crime enters a dwelling, it is like death. It does not come alone. Listen, what does it signify to you if I am murdered? Are you my friend? Are you a man? Have you a heart? No, you are a physician. Well, I tell you, I will not drag my daughter before a tribunal and give her up to the executioner. Would drive me like a madman to dig my heart out with my fingernails. And if you were mistaken, doctor, if you were not my daughter, if I should come one day, pale as a spectre, and say to you, 'Assassin, you have killed my child,' hold, If that should happen, although I am a Christian, Monsieur d'Avrigny, I should kill myself." "Well," said the doctor, after a moment's silence, "I will wait." Villefort looked at him as if he had doubted his words. "Only," continued Monsieur d'Avrigny with a slow and solemn tone, "if anyone falls ill in your house, if you feel yourself attacked, do not send for me, for I will come no more. I will consent to share this dreadful secret with you, but I will not allow shame and remorse to grow and increase in my conscience, as crime and misery will in your house." "Then you abandon me, doctor?" "Yes, for I can follow you no farther, and I only stop at the foot of the scaffold. Some further discovery will be made which will bring this dreadful tragedy to a close. Adieu." "I entreat you, doctor." "All the horrors that disturb my thoughts make your house odious and fatal. Adieu, sir." One single word more, doctor. You go, leaving me in all the horror of my situation, after increasing it by what you have revealed to me. But what will be reported of the sudden death of the poor old servant?" "True," said Monsieur d'Avrigny. "We will return." The doctor went out first, followed by Monsieur de Villefort. The terrified servants were on the stairs and in the passage where the doctor would pass. "Sir," said d'Avrigny to Villefort, so loud that all might hear, "poor Barrois has led too sedentary a life of late. Accustomed formerly to ride on horseback or in the carriage to the four corners of Europe, the monotonous walk around that armchair has killed him. His blood has thickened. He was stout, had a short, thick neck. He was attacked with apoplexy, and I was called in too late. By the way," added he in a low tone, "take care to throw away that cup of syrup of violets in the ashes." The doctor, without shaking hands with Villefort, without adding a word to what he had said, went out, amid the tears and lamentations of the whole household. The same evening all Villefort's servants, who had assembled in the kitchen and had a long consultation, came to tell Madame de Villefort that they wished to leave. No entreaty, no proposition of increased wages could induce them to remain. To every argument they replied, "We must go, for death is in this house." They all left, in spite of prayers and entreaties, testifying their regret at leaving so good a master and mistress, and especially Mademoiselle Valentine, so good, so kind, and so gentle. Villefort looked at Valentine as they said this. She was in tears, and, strange as it was, in spite of the emotions he felt at the sight of these tears, he looked also at Madame de Villefort, and it appeared to him as if a slight, gloomy smile had passed over her thin lips, like a meteor seen passing inauspiciously between two clouds in a stormy sky. End of chapter 80.
Did you scream? Did you freak out? Valentine is being accused? What? Do you know who the real poisoner is? Do you have your suspicions? I think somebody else has some suspicions. So the one thing I said I was going to tell you about is at the beginning of chapter 80, the doctor talks about how once in every generation or once in every 100 years, I can't remember exactly what he said, but every so often we have these great killers, these poisoners of fame and lore. And he cites a couple specific names: Locusta, Locusta, and Agrippina, Agrippina. Locusta was such an amazing poisoner that she's the one, and I think we've mentioned her before, she's the one who started a school for poisoners. She was arrested, she was put in prison, she was then brought out by Nero, and then re-put into her school, and then eventually she got caught and killed. But that's a different part of the story. The important part of the story is she was really, really good at her job. And I found a couple of websites, one that is not safe for work, NSFW, or definitely not safe for children, but funny. And then another one that's a little bit more scholarly. And I've linked to those in the show notes at craftlit.com/456 in case you want to read more about the tangled web that this woman is the center of, like the spider waiting for her prey at the center of the madness. The other two people that our doctor mentioned, Brunhilde or Brunhilde, depending on which version of her name you find written down, because she was back in, I think, 500 AD. The location was Austrasia. So it's like Austria, but not Austria. It's old. But she was up there, as was Fredegond. And if you've read Candide, this looks like Cunegonde. So same idea in the name. These are two women who were related by marriage, who had a bit of a rivalry going on. Their story also, again, because it's a long time ago, there are various different versions of it, but the upshot is one was jealous of the other, and therefore lots of people died. Poison being the main operative in each one of those cases. The histories of these stories are fascinating, and I will leave those links for you so that you can go have fun reading up on them. If for no other reason than that it seems we will be having a lot of poison stuff to deal with as we continue through the book. Poor Valentine. Poor Maximilian. He doesn't even know yet. Oof. It's going to be a bad day for him. And it's going to be a worse day for a couple characters next week. So we'll have 2 more big chapters next week's episode 457. So looking forward to that. Thank you to premium audio listeners, both old and new, for moving your membership from the old PayPal MailChimp setup. And I mean old, this is, I think, 6 years old. Thank you for moving your membership over to our brand spanking new membership setup on craftlit.com. It is so much easier for me to manage, and I am very, very hopeful that it will be so much easier for you to get the audio that you want, and maybe a couple of little surprises along the way. And just to clarify something that I didn't talk about in the recent Craftlit email, one of the problems that we're having with the app and with Patreon is retiring old audio. Some pretty unpleasant, unsavory things are happening behind the scenes that we're trying to stop from happening. I want to make the access to premium audio as equitable as possible between the different platforms being the craftlit.com membership, the patreon.com patronage, and the Libsyn app premium audio access. Those 3 ways that you can get the audio, it's provided differently on each platform, and I'm trying to unify that. But one of the things that means is retiring old audio. We'd had this problem several years ago, and I thought we fixed the problem, but now as technology updates, I keep having to go back and figure out ways to make sure that you get what you pay for and that other people don't steal what you're paying for. So there will be clearer guidelines set in as many places as I can figure out I need to post them. But the upshot is 6 months after a book is done, that book will disappear from all of the premium audio platforms. People who are subscribed to premium audio, wherever you're subscribed to it at that point, will be given a coupon code where you can go and get the previous books for a discount from the shop. I think that's the best way to do it. In cases of books that are epic, like The Count of Monte Cristo, although that's not premium, or Bleak House, which was, it's going to depend a lot on the structure of the book. Bleak House had several volumes, and it made it really easy to separate things out in a very Dickensian way. Other books are different, so I'm just going to have to make announcements on how those are going to go when they happen. So thank you for your understanding. If you have any genius ideas, please feel free to share them. It's gotten harder to do some of these things since we lost Vanessa, but we will soldier on. So thank you for your support. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your app listening. Thank you for your craftlit.com membership move. I so appreciate it. You are all the best. Have a great week. I will talk to you soon with 2 more awesome chapters and a crafty chat next week, either from here or another undisclosed location where there is air conditioning. Who knows what the future will bring? All right, take care. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. A big thanks to all the Craftlit listeners who support the show by being a premium audio member via craftlit.com/premium or via patreon.com/craftlit. Your support for the show is what's kept us going since 2006. If you feel like getting free audio pretty much every week, please consider supporting the show by heading over to patreon.com/craftlit and pledging what you feel the show is worth to you. If you can't support the show that way, consider leaving a review at iTunes or at our facebook.com/craftlit page, or follow @craftlit on Twitter and share the show with your followers too. And remember, if your hands are too busy to pick up a book, at least you can turn one on.